Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Five Questions with the Paulist Fathers. I'm Deacon Mike Hayes, and today we're going to go out to one of my favorite states in all of the East Coast, Connecticut. New Deacon affiliate member, Deacon Mike Berstene, is with us. Deacon Mike, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great today, and it's a real pleasure to be with you.
It was great to be on retreat with you last week too. Um, we finally got a chance to meet in person, which was great. And so let's get right into it with question one. You met the Paulists at UConn during your college years. So tell me one way that they influenced you as a college student.
Well, when I was in college at UConn, there was it was a time when I wouldn't have really called myself overtly practicing Catholic. I mean, I went to Mass on Sunday. Um, if there was an interesting meal that the Paulists were hosting, I was there. Free food is always good when you're a college student. But they introduced me to a part of the church that I hadn't really seen before. I'd lived in many different places and been in many different parishes, but always ran into diocesan priests. This was the first time I ran into an order. And they kind of had a whole different view of who we are and how we can be church. And they really opened my eyes to see really a broader view of what church was. When during that time, I met my wife, Mary Frances, and we were dating. And between I was in engineering and doing internships, and she was a teacher doing student teaching, we spent a lot of time in different places, and so we really didn't have all that time together. So we did something that's really old-fashioned and probably not done anymore. We wrote letters. And in writing letters to each other, both of us saved our letters. I don't
Ah,
know. That's a very romantic thing. And years later, somewhere around our 25th, which is about a little more than 25 years ago, we took the letters out and read them.
hmm.
And I was amazed at the number of time God and prayer were mentioned. And so I think the Paulists kind of pushing you a little to be someone who lives their faith in a way that's not just weekends,
Hmm.
really bled into even our relationship with one another. So they were really a foundation for me. As in college, you discover a lot of things about yourself, discovering that this is a faith that I chose and wanted to participate in.
That's incredible. That's a great story. Question two. You've been a deacon since 1973. I won't tell you how old I was in 1973. But what's your favorite part about being a deacon?
I think it's the privilege of being with people at some of the best and some of the most challenging times in their lives. I can't tell you the number of times when it's just been pure joy to be celebrating a baptism or a wedding with someone. But it's also been extremely rewarding to be able to be walking with somebody in a very difficult time. When I was called at one point, several times you get called in times oh, we Deacon, can you come over now? We need you now. I was called to go to the Children's Hospital in Hartford because I'd been visiting with the family. It was a real blended family. There was a young man who had cerebral palsy, and he wasn't doing all that well, and his mother and his stepfather. And so they called me because that he wasn't doing expected to live much longer, and he was in the hospital. Could you come and pray with us? So I got there, and when I was at the hospital, I don't know what inspired me, but other than the Spirit was present, we decided to do a gratitude rosary. And in the room was his father and his stepfather, who wouldn't talk to one another, and a bunch of other relatives. Um, it was a it was a Hispanic family, so nothing was ever done solo. Everything was done in family. And and so we started praying the gratitude rosary. And that way that worked was that for each decade, whoever was leading the decade would say something on each Hail Mary that they were grateful for in having known Isaiah. His name was Isaiah. And so the stepfather heard the father, who really had a hard time with the fact that his son had an issue, and and the stepfather heard that from the father, and the father heard the love of the stepfather, and I think they never listened to each other before.
Wow.
And at the end of the gratitude rosary, which took forever because nobody was quick about what they were saying, the two men hugged, and that was the Holy Spirit. And you don't get to be in those places unless you get invited. And I think the diaconate provides an avenue for us to be a catalyst for people to hear each other.
Mm, perfect. Reflects a lot of my own experience too, which is great. Yeah. Question three. Tell me about the Deacon Mission Service team in your part of the world there.
Okay, there were a number of us, particularly there were three deacons who were ordained at different times, but who bonded as in a fraternity. And we used to get together and have a few sandwiches and beers, and as guys would, and kind of talk about it. And we decided that maybe there was something we were being called to do that went beyond simply serving in our parishes, something that maybe had a diocesan flair to it. So we kind of formed what we called was the Deacon Mission Service Team. The Deacon Mission Service Team became then this forum that we used to offer our services to the diocese in different ways.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that we thought we could do was we could have the Three Musketeers go and do parish missions. And so we went to the Evangelization Institute with Father Frank and Father Ken Boyack, and they really taught us a lot. And then
Paulists, yes, right.
two Paulists, and then they connected us with the Paulist Father, Father Tom Tavello, who coached us and really made us think about what you do in a mission, how you do it, helped us to write our 500-page mission manual that covered everything we were going to do. And so then with the Paulist kind of pushing us in that way, we went out and did parish missions on evangelization. It was actually called Catholic and Loving It. And that was the first one we did at a time when the church was in crisis for all of the scandals. And so it turned out to be a real interesting thing. And then we've stuck together and been involved in a lot of different projects. And one of us will get a call and say, hey, can the three deacons come? And so we've done all kinds of different things within the diocese.
That's incredible. Father Tom Tavella, I've been on many of his missions, and he's just incredible. So you had a great teacher there in him. Let's go question four. You lived in a bunch of different cities throughout your childhood, but you lived in Puerto Rico during your high school years. Tell me what was the best part about being a stranger in a strange land?
Well, yeah, I actually have a kind of a little different feeling about stranger in a strange land because I was a stranger everywhere. Living in 10 cities before you can get out of high school, you never really feel like you're part of what's going on. You're always the stranger. Mm-hmm. So we went to San Juan. My father's job moved him about quite a bit. He was an independent consultant, so he was always working somewhere different. And so he was born in Puerto Rico. And so for him, it was going home. For us, it was learning something about our heritage. And so the best part about being there was experiencing another culture in another language and another point of view. And if there was ever any time that we as Catholics realized that this is a universal church, that there's everybody here, seeing people who saw things maybe a little differently than I'd experienced them, but yet were extremely faithful people. And it was great fun. And as you can imagine, being a teenager in a place where the sun shone 365 days a year, where every week, at least a few times a week, you were swimming or out on the beach. I mean, this was not a sacrifice. It was a fun time. And part of I think becoming a citizen of the world, and the more that we're citizens of the world, the more that we see each other truly as brothers and sisters. I mean, we're called to see each other as brothers and sisters. experiencing it brings a new dimension.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, question five, our fun question that we like to ask a lot of people. It's a zombie apocalypse. So, who are three saints or holy people you'd like to have on your side fighting against the zombies?
Well, yeah, the problem is I'd like to have all of the saints on my back. But I guess Saint Michael is an obvious one because my patron saint, and
Sure.
my patron saint guards me a lot, and I need a defender if the zombies are around the corner. That was an easy one. The second one was Saint Oscar Romero, and Oscar Romero, he was a large part of my vocation. When I was contemplating the diaconate and discerning whether or not this is something God was really calling me to, the friend of mine actually gave me some cassette tapes. That tells you how long ago it was. And they were the cassette tapes of Oscar Romero's homilies. And they were great. And this was listening to him in Spanish with his passion, the way he was on the radio. And when he was preaching, he preached on the radio. There was absolutely no place you could go in El Salvador where you couldn't hear him because every radio in every house with all the windows open was playing his homilies. I mean, it was a national event. And so I listened to these things. And he had the courage to tell people that God's law trumped every other law, that God's law was greater than the civil law. God's law was even greater than what your military commanders were telling you to do. If you knew that it was against God's law, you had justification for saying no. And that cost him his life. And so I'd love to have him with me because he's got the courage to do what needs to be done, even when you don't know how it's going to come out, but it isn't going to be pretty. The third one was Pope St. John Paul II, because of his wit and wisdom. And I think if you're going to defeat some zombies, you don't not only need somebody with courage and somebody that's a defender, but you need someone that's smart enough to figure out how do you make this work? How do you get out of this situation? And the reading of the writings of St. John Paul II, kind of his whole sense of who we are and the theology of the body and the whole sense that we are truly an interconnected body of Christ that's real, and not just the part of us that's in church, but all of us all the time are real, and that in every aspect of life God is present, and God being present has to be a part of defeating some zombies out there. You know, if there was room for another saint, I'd call the patron of today, the feast day of today, St. James, because St. James had the courage and the passion to say things that needed to be said at a time when that was life-threatening.
True. Absolutely. Well, Deacon Mike, it was great spending time with you today, but also great spending time with you on retreat a little while ago and going through formation together as Paulist Deacon affiliates. It's been really wonderful just getting to know you and being able to call you and Mary Frances friends now. And thanks for joining us here today on Five Questions.
Oh, my pleasure. And it's always great to be with you. And I really did enjoy being on the retreat and taking our first promise together. That was a very moving time.
This has been Five Questions with the Paulists. I'm Deacon Mike Hayes. He's Deacon Mike Berstene, and we'll see you all again next time.